Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Friday Ramblings. We are here to discuss a little more professional wrestling, especially those championships, because we're going to talk about the TNA Legends Championship. Or was I supposed to talk about the Global Championship? Let me think for a second. No, I was definitely going to talk about the King of the Mountain Championship at some point. Wait, I know, it was supposed to be the Television Championship. It's all of them! Yep, that's right, TNA decided to create a physical championship belt and then couldn't decide what kind of championship it was going to be. It had a serious identity crisis going on. And we're going to go ahead and just break them all down at once. Because, as I said, it was all one physical belt. So, why not? All of the insanity started way back on October 23rd, 2008. This was in the middle of the angle between the TNA Frontline, which was basically the veteran roster members of TNA, those who had not really achieved any major level of fame before TNA started, and thus were known as TNA Mainstays, TNA Originals, and the Main Event Mafia, a group composed of former WWE and WCW veterans who were primarily remembered for being main event world champion caliber athletes. And the fact that the Main Event Mafia felt that they were better than TNA because of that. So, part of these shenanigans was Booker T decided to start carrying around a briefcase, and after a few weeks, opened the briefcase to reveal a physical championship belt that he called the Legends Championship and declared he was going to be the first champion without ever winning it. Now, while on the surface that does sound like the kind of arrogant heel thing that you would expect from a group like the Main Event Mafia, the truth is that's pretty much how it worked a lot of times in the old territory days, amusingly. With a babyface or heel, the promoter would create a new champion and just hand it to somebody to be the first champion. Of course, that was all done backstage. Booker T did it all on camera. Now, because Booker T created the championship, it was originally considered a illegitimate championship. It was not owned by TNA. They had no legal ability to force Booker T to defend it. And as such, Booker would only defend it when he felt like it. Fortunately, after a period of time, AJ Styles convinced Booker T to defend the belt at the 2009 edition of Destination X. AJ Styles would then go on to defeat Booker T. 4 days later, Styles was not only credited as becoming the first ever TNA Grand Slam champion due to having previously won the World Heavyweight, World Tag Team, and X Division championships, but TNA Management Director Jim Cornette, the Great Corny, then announced that TNA Legends Championship had become an official TNA sanctioned championship thanks to Styles defeating Booker T for it legally via the contract signed leading up to the Destination X match. Thus, TNA had control of when it was defended and who it was defended against, like every other championship in TNA, which is a good thing. Now, we're going to go through the Master List Champions real quick. First, we're going to go through this identity crisis part, so I'm going to jump ship a little, and then we'll go back and redo our champion countdown that we traditionally do with these belts. Now, as I said, this was all done in mid-March of 2009. On October 29th of 2009, recently won and newly crowned champion Eric Young renamed the title the TNA Global Championship as part of his heel turn, which included emphasizing his Canadian roots. He would go on to declare he was not going to defend it against any American wrestlers and would try really hard not to defend it on American soil at all. Sure enough, his first defense was on December 10th against Japanese female wrestler Hamada. He would then defend it around Europe as part of an extended tour TNA took, ultimately losing it to Welsh wrestler Rob Terry in Cardiff, Wales on January 27, 2010. In July of 2010, Terry would lose the Global Championship to AJ Styles. Styles would then decide, since the whole thing about the Global Championship was kind of a heel turn, and AJ Styles wasn't into that, and he was a good guy who appreciated the history of pro wrestling, he would rename the Global Championship into the Television Championship, referencing the TV titles of the old days, such as the famous WCW one, which we have discussed in previous videos. This would create another interesting era for our belt. It is now the Television Championship, its third identity. And because of the logic of it being a television championship, on April 19th, 2012, so a year and 10 months after being declared a television championship, TNA gets there eventually, folks. TNA General Manager Hulk Hogan ordered that the television championship had to be defended every week. However, this only lasted until June 21st of the same year. After an extended period of time in which it was not seen on TV, on July 3rd, 2014, TNA Executive Director, yes, that is our third on-screen authority figure with the third different title to refer to the same, scripted authority position. It's TNA, folks. We're sensing a trend here. But, as I said, authority figure Kurt Angle declared the championship inactive. On June 25th, 2015, TNA decided to reactivate the championship under the new name of the TNA King of the Mountain Championship, referencing the previously established throughout TNA's history King of the Mountain match. It's basically a more convoluted ladder match for people not familiar with TNA and the King of the Mountain match. The new champion would be determined at Slammiversary on June 28th, and the first champion would be Jeff Jarrett. Because of that, it would subsequently appear in GFW, a independent promotion owned by Jeff Jarrett. And the whole GFW TNA crossover thing is a whole nother hill of beans we're not going to get in today. Needless to say, it got a little crazy when two companies basically tried to operate as one because Jeff Jarrett had problems getting a TV deal for GFW. But still, the belt decided to show up over there for a little while. And come August 18th, 2016, in Impact Wrestling, it was announced that the King of the Mountain Championship would be vacated, deactivated, and retired to free up space on television and audience attention for a new title, the Impact Grand Championship. However, because this had a completely different physical belt made for it, we're not getting into the Grand Championship tonight. So, that is 4 belts renamed by various wrestlers, competed for under various rules and stipulations, starting off being an unofficial belt that was made official very quickly on And when it's all said and done, basically is the perfect sum up of TNA's problems throughout the company's histories. They had a really cool looking belt. They had a really cool idea of using it to get heel heat on Booker T. And then almost immediately took it off Booker T. Only to then constantly not figure out what to do with it now that they had it. That was TNA in a nutshell. Which makes it, in my personal opinion, the definitive TNA championship. That's what TNA did. So, let's go through our list of champions. As I said, originally it belonged to Booker T, who held it for 143 days. AJ Styles would be our second champion. Discuss this, granting him the status of Grand Slam champion. And this is when it became officially sanctioned. 126 days later, he would lose to Kevin Nash at the Victory Road pay-per-view, who would only hold it for 3 days before losing it to Mick Foley on TNA Impact, when Foley teamed with Bobby Lashley against Kevin Nash and World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle, both members of the Main Event Mafia, in a tag team match in which if a champion was pinned, he lost his singles title. Foley then pinned Nash to become the new champion. However, he would only hold it for 25 days before Kevin Nash won it back at the Hard Justice pay-per-view. 63 days later, at Bound for Glory, Eric Young would win it, and this is the reign in which he would rename it the Global Championship. 101 days later, he loses it to Rob Terry, loses it 167 days later to AJ Styles, who, during this second reign, renames it the Television Championship, as we previously discussed, holding it for 145 days before losing it to Doug Williams at Final Resolution, who held it for 35 days, dropping it at their next pay-per-view, Genesis to Abyss. However, after 64 days, the title was vacated due to Abyss being unable to defend it after suffering a storyline injury. Yep, they vacated the belt to put over Abyss being taken out in fiction. It happens. You know, I prefer titles only be vacated because of real injuries, but, you know, it's TNA. Lulz. The vacant title was then won by Gunner, who defeated Murphy and Rob Terry in a three-way match. During this time, Impact was rebranded as Impact Wrestling. And after 64 days as champion, Gunner lost it to our old buddy EY, Eric Young, who would hold it for 180 days before losing it to Robbie E., better known now in NXT as manager Robert Stone, who won it at the Turning Point pay-per-view for 126 days before losing it to Devon, aka Devon Dudley, who won it at Victory Road, held it for 192 days before the belt was vacated due to contract negotiations between TNA and Devon breaking off. Again, like injuries, hey, the guy's not working in the company anymore, that's a valid reason for a title to be vacated. Although, it would have been nice if he'd agreed to work one more match to drop the belt to somebody. But hey, what can I say? I've never been a professional wrestler. I've never been in a contract negotiation situation. I'm not judging, just saying as a fan, I prefer to see titles won and lost. Samoa Joe would defeat Mr. Anderson to win the vacant championship, holding it for 70 days before Devon returns to the company and wins it back, getting another 178 days with the title before on June 2nd, 2013 at Slammiversary, Abyss wins it, and for 396 days does nothing with it. Literally, this is the reign we mentioned earlier where Kurt Angle declared the title inactive, as during that entire 396 day, the championship had not been defended, seen, or even mentioned. Basically, they put it on Abyss, quit really doing anything with Abyss, and when he did come back, he didn't bring the championship with him, and nobody noticed or cared for a while. And when somebody finally did, they said, oh, well, we'll just declare the title vacant. All of this is so little less than a year later, Jeff Jarrett could win it as the newly renamed King of the Mountain Championship. He defeated Bobby Roode, Drew Galloway, Eric Young, and Matt Hardy in a King of the Mountain match. Once again at Slammiversary. However, the title was vacated 29 days later when Jeff Jarrett became TNA General Manager. PJ Black then won it in another King of the Mountain match against Lashley, Chris Mordetsky, Eric Young, and Robbie E. However, this would only last for one day before he lost it to Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode would then lose it 162 days later to Eric Young. With this victory, Young becomes the only wrestler to win this championship under all four of its incarnations, thus making him the definitive TNA blah, 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 champion. Good on EY. Still, 73 days later after this historic reign, he loses it to Bram at the Sacrifice event in a Falls Count Anywhere match. However, Bram only held it for 35 days before losing it to Eli Drake, currently known as L.A. Knight, who had an 82-day reign before James Storm won it for 28 days, finally dropping it to Bobby Lashley in a winner-takes-all match, which also saw Lashley's TNA World Heavyweight Championship and TNA X Division Championship on the line. One day later, the title would be declared vacant and retired for good this time. I don't know where the physical belt is, probably in some TNA-owned warehouse. Honestly, I would totally bring the belt design back. It was kind of cool looking. Yeah? Had nice red leather strap. A lot of gold in the front. Very classic looking championship. Let's break down what's all said and done. Because of Abyss's year-plus reign of basically throwing the belt in a closet and forgetting about it, he is your longest reigning champion at 460 days. You know, because he was a two-time champion. Devon, who had a similar extended period where they weren't doing much with the belt, is the second longest champion at 370 days. Our iconic champion, Eric Young, held it for 354 days. Our boy AJ, Georgia represent, held it for 271 days. Rob Terry at 167, Bobby Roode at 162, Booker T at 143, Robbie E at 126, Eli Drake had 82, Samoa Joe 70, Kevin Nash's two reigns added up to 66. And then you have Gunner at 64, Bram at 35, Douglas Williams at 35, sharing a spot. Jeff Jarrett held it for 29 days, James Storm for 28, Mick Foley for 25, and at the bottom of the stack, final champion Lashley and Blink and You Miss It champion PJ Black held it for 1 day each. Were any of these matches really particularly memorable? You know, I'll be honest, yeah, Booker T and AJ's match where AJ got to legitimize the belt was a pretty solid match between two great wrestlers. You know, Eric Young winning it and healing it up by declaring it the Global Championship was actually pretty fun booking at first, and had they stuck with that gimmick, that it was a belt that would basically only be defended in matches between folks between two different countries, and preferably not on American soil, that would have been a really interesting gimmick for both baby faces and heels. Like, could you imagine a storyline possibility of, babyface winning the global championship, wanting to, defend it against a worthy contender, but, bro, I'm sorry, we're both Americans. I can't do anything. It's the rules of the championship. So the buddy's like, should I be tempted to do something non-babyface and cost him the championship so I can challenge somebody else, since they'll obviously be from a different country than me, and it can be a clash? Or is my friendship with this person more important than championship gold? Classic conflict angle. Plus, you can mix in the always good way to get cheap heel heat. Hey, I dislike your country stuff. Hey, I'm going to take the global championship from you because, you Americans put your stink on every other championship in TNA, and I need to take this belt away from you so we can purify and keep it good. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities for it on both sides of the fence. Could have been interesting. Eric Young laid out some rules that, had they been adhered to and let really go forth in a major booking manner, could have led to some interesting angles for years. The whole renaming it Television Championship. Look, again, I get it. It was a historical note. WCW wasn't the only group to have a television championship. That term was used in a few other territories, so it was a respect thing. I didn't mind the television champion era, but that was also the era where it seemed like TNA quit really emphasizing the belt heavily. You started getting more vacatings. The belt flat out just not even being used on TV, right? It's like, even if you're not making defenses, at least let the, book the champion on a semi-regular basis. Let them walk out with the belt. I mean, that whole thing where Abyss had it for over a year and it was nothing. It was a non-factor. Like, commentators didn't even mention, like, hey, where's Abyss? Where's the television championship? That was awkward. The King of the Mountain Championship era, honestly, I didn't care. Partly that was the point where I was about giving up on TNA for a few levels. But part of it is, as I said, the King of the Mountain Championship is a really convoluted ladder match at its core, and I just was never a huge fan of the match gimmick. I get it was a TNA original match gimmick, and, it was an excuse to use it, but the fact that some of those later championships were flat out not even done under those rules kind of goofed it up. As I said, classic TNA. Hey, we named the championship after a match stipulation that we created, that we love to dig out of mothballs every so often. So it's going to be a championship for that match gimmick, and after a couple title changes, we don't care anymore. We're just going to defend it in other matches. As I said, it's the definitive TNA belt. They couldn't keep track of what they were supposed to do with it. Just like they couldn't keep track of how they were supposed to keep a lot of their stars over. But, hey, I'm not picking on TNA. I have a lot of fond memories of watching TNA for years there. I'll forever tell you, even when the television booking was pretty weak, the house shows that they would put on were really rock solid. They had great wrestlers who could come together and put on great matches. So if you went to a house show where they didn't really worry about putting angles over and developing them and just let guys and girls go out and put on great matches, it was always a fun time. I went to a few of them. But still, in the end, this is about TNA's championship, and that is the history of it. And I'll probably mess around with TNA more and their champions' histories. So, stick tuned. Or stick around and stay tuned, which would be the proper way to say those phrases. For now, though, I'm going to leave you. Let you get on with your weekend. And hopefully, you do remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so every time I ramble on Fridays, you will make sure not to miss it. And as always, if you'd like to drop a comment, maybe even have a suggestion for a topic, feel free to jump on in. I'm always happy to hear from you. Until next time, stay happy and healthy, and I'll see you in 7.